in the heart of Adlerian psychology that humans are social beings and that all behavior has social meaning. And one of the core ideas that Adler developed is Gemeinschaftsgefühl, which translates in English to community feeling or social interest. Adlerians value social interest to the extent that it is viewed as a measure for psychological and mental health. And on the other hand, lacking social interest is taken to be one of the main reasons behind psychological dysfunction and maladaptation. Hello everyone, this is Abdo, and today we are diving deeper in another episode of Alfred Adler series. If you haven't watched the previous videos, you can still find them up here. Before we move forward and define community feeling or social interest, let's first understand what is a community in Adlerian understanding. Adler understood a community to be inclusive of all humanity. In fact, Adler went further to include plants, animals, and inanimate objects. As we discussed in previous videos, one of the main ideas in Adlerian psychology that humans are always striving to overcome inferiorities and to move from one state to a better state. However, this striving can actually occur in a socially useful or a socially useless manner. And this is where the idea of community feeling or social interest comes into play. To define community feeling or social interest, I find it helpful to start by understanding what community feeling and social interest is not. Community feeling or social interest is not giving up your authentic self. It is not playing someone else's role. It is also not neglecting your own needs. Community feeling is not putting yourself last. It is not sacrificing your own individual purpose. It is not driven by social recognition. And last but not the least, it is definitely not a win-lose situation. Community feeling or social interest is an orientation to live cooperatively with others and a lifestyle that values the common good above one's interests and desires. Community feeling or social interest is characterized as an experience of having commonalities with others and being part of a community. It is to feel that people are your allies instead of your enemies. And it is also a willingness to give and serve the community as much as we tend to expect to receive from it. To understand community feeling or social interest in a more practical sense, it could be equated with empathy and compassion for oneself and others. Adler described empathy as seeing with the eyes of another, hearing with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. And now you might wonder, how did my current social interest level develop? In fact, Adler believed that all human beings are born with an innate capacity for social interest. However, just like other capacities and traits, we lose touch with it. Our current level of social interest could be understood as part of our lifestyle, which according to Adler, developed in our early childhood years. To gain a better understanding of how our current level of social interest developed and how we can further cultivate it, you can watch a video that I made earlier about lifestyle. To clarify, social interest is not something that we are endowed with. It is not a matter of whether you have it or you're doomed. In fact, social interest can never be externally forced onto you. It is rather intentionally cultivated, and we all have equal access to developing our social interest through the ways we choose to respond and show up in the world. And finally, social interest is where your individual gifts and dreams meet the needs of the collective, creating winning situations for all parties. And this brings us to the end of this video. Stay safe and see you next time.